Assalamu alaikum, Runtings Rude Boy, Nabil Aziz, Becoming the Alpha Muslim.com and the Becoming the Alpha Muslim podcast here to you today with my man, my homie, one of Chi-Town's finest and co-host of the Mad Mamluks podcast. And real quick, before I let him say hello, I just want to say that anything you hear from Murtaza today is not reflective of the Mad Mamluks organization. We indemnify them and hold them irresponsible for anything that happens here today. Mort's opinions are his own and not reflective of the TMM Mad Mamluks group as a whole. So check yourself before you wreck yourself. Mort, what up?
What up? What up? Salam alaikum. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be back with you. A lot of people don't know this, but we actually met in Dubai, so we kind of we vibe a little bit more than maybe some other people that Nabil interviews because we just have that in-person connection. But it's always great, and like Nabil said, my views right now are not of TMM. Not that I'm any different than on TMM, but we have different subject matter pretty much, and so this is completely independent of that. I want to put that out there. And yeah, I'm glad to be here. Let's get this party started.
For real. So we've got a few topics that we want to go through, and we'll try to take as long as we take with them, but we won't keep you guys too long. First topic on the list is recent Twitter drama. So just to give you guys some context, I put out a tweet earlier this week, maybe a few days ago, saying literally, when a Muslim man studies Sharia. Well, let me just find the tweet real quick and read it to you verbatim.
So while you're pulling it up,
got it.
I just know it caused a big storm, like in certain circles, because certain individuals were tagged and people felt like they had to justify themselves and things like that. So it wasn't really a big deal on my part, but I'll let Nabil go ahead and pull it up now.
Yeah. So this is the exact tweet that I wrote. Okay. So it says, when a Muslim man studies Sharia, more ibadah leads to more humility, leads to teaching others, leads to da'wah, leads to serving the community. And then when a Muslim woman studies Sharia, leads to going from full hijab to hijabi fashionista to turban hijab to takes off the hijab to starts dating non-Muslim men. So that was the tweet. It was very vague. It was very general. Obviously, it was a generalization. Why don't you tell me what were your initial thoughts when you read that tweet?
I mean, look, now granted, my initial thoughts might be a little bit biased because I know you, right?
Yeah.
But I knew immediately, first of all, that this is not a generalization. Like, you're not talking about all women or all alimas or all students of knowledge. I was almost positive that it had to do something with somebody's tweet or something that came out or something, something like that. It wasn't like, I don't feel like it was, just generalized. But I think the essence of the subject matter is true. Maybe the language of it was maybe a little bit forward and bold and maybe politically incorrect. But I think it's a real issue that is happening, right? I mean, because the immediate thought I had was, well, there's a large trend of Muslim women who are just changing, and there's a trend, and there are popular YouTubers, there are popular bloggers and vloggers, and they're going through a certain shift right now because of feminism or whatever it may be, or any kind of ism that is affecting them or influencing them. And we see a shift, and we're seeing a lot of people follow that pattern. And so maybe I thought it was just an observation that you had, and I believe that a lot of people have also observed that, but just probably didn't say anything.
No, bro, I am the voice of the silent majority on Muslim social media. I'm saying, like, okay, because here's my thing. Everybody on Muslim social media is trying to present a picture of themselves. I mean, and this is sort of related to Islamic adab, right? It's just normal in Muslim behavior. where okay, even if you're a shitty person in private, you try to present yourself like a generally like a respectable individual in public. But now it's going too far. Like it's like everybody is like, for just from my perspective, everybody is being fake. And you know what? I actually tweeted out as well that I actually prefer those hijabi fashionista types who are tweeting about dating and talking about I want my back broken on my wedding night and all of that stuff. Uh, I actually appreciate those people more than this, quote unquote fake ass dawah Muslim Twitter that they're trying to, I don't know what they're trying to do, but really it just looks like fake.
Yeah, no,
And
I get you.
you know what? When you push their buttons, all of their adab goes out the window, all of it.
Yeah, no,
And
I
then,
get you.
and
I
then
get you
oh,
totally.
I'm real sorry for interrupting you, man. Please excuse me. And you know what happens is they'll get into it with you. They'll stay up until 4 a.m. arguing with you. Okay, then they'll make a tweet thread apologizing to their audience because, oh my god, guys, I don't know what came over me. I got emotional. Yeah, you got emotional because you're a fake motherfucker. Like, bro, like,
No, I mean, I get
I'm
it.
just going on a rant, man. Sorry about that.
No, I get it. And I think here's the thing. I think they're trying to use social media to be like this bridge between being that hip down, that Muslim that knows about everything is like, they want to have the best of both, right? They want to be like a Twitter alim or like a social media alim or alima. And then they still want to be down with the street, right? Like they want to be down with the new slang, I'm just drill music, all the hip and they want to be down with it all, but you can't have the best of both worlds, right? You can't be tweeting, for example, talking about akhlaq or manners in one tweet and then talking about ripping out somebody's vagina in the next, right? It just doesn't work. You know what I mean? Like either, I mean, and here's the thing, like, I think you just got to be you, right? You don't have to appeal to anybody. And I think one of the problems is this is a symptom of social media, meaning that everybody wants to glamour up their life. Like, oh, my life is great. Look at me. Look how I'm doing. Look how wonderful my day is. Look at the food that I'm eating. Look at this great new style I have, or I spent this much money on a bag, or here's my makeup. And you know what I mean? Like, it's just very, it's fake, right? People who, I think I would say this, 99% of the time, I can almost guarantee you that people are not like the way they are on Twitter versus real life. In real life, they're probably completely different. And then now people are wondering why they have relationship failures, like why they're not getting anywhere in relationships. Because when you go out to meet somebody, you're totally different. Like nobody recognizes you, right? On Twitter, you could be anybody you want to be. You could be anything and anybody, right? But when you meet somebody in person and they're completely different, people think you're a fraud. And I think what happens is when you highlight those moments on social media and you call them out, it pushes them because they know inside that they're a fraud. Like they don't really believe what they believe or act the way they act in real life. You know what I mean? Like it's just very different. That's how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I try my best to behave online, and I know you do as well. I try my best to behave online the way I am in person. I am literally like this in person. So like I'll make Me Too jokes like to women like I've just met to their face. I'll like if I'm like at work with a female
Wait, give me an
colleague.
example of a Me Too joke, or you would do it. Just give me like a sample. Like,
Like,
would you
okay,
come to and go, you scream Me Too?
no. For example, my friend and colleague, we were business partners for a while. He went out to interview this female applicant. She was applying for a sales role, and they went to a lunch meeting, and they came back to introduce. He came back to introduce the applicant, the lady, to the team. So we were just joking around like we normally do in the office, and generally my friend has a funny personality, so I told her, are you going to be posting Me Too tomorrow on Instagram? And we've like this is literally 5 minutes after we've met her. So I have no, like, I don't have the filter. Like I'll say what comes into my mind. Sometimes it gets me into trouble, but generally I find that people respond positively to it. And people are just generally so uptight over that all the time, you know. Man, relax, fucking relax, dude.
Yeah, yeah. No, I get you. But look, on the flip side, though, so I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here
For
because, I
sure.
think to have an open conversation, I think, look, man, there is real abuse of women, though. There it happens, right?
Maybe 10%, dude. I think maybe 90% is them like being emotional and whining about like having to do a little bit of work around the house.
Okay, well, check this out, though. No, but check this out. So,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
so
Sorry.
I was doing a little bit of like research about like rape stats and sexual abuse because of the whole Kavanaugh thing that's been going on, right? I watched the whole testimony and hearing and all that stuff. And so I don't have all of like the exact study, but out of all the sexual like offenders or offenses that were reported, they said that 90% are actually true and about 10% at max were falsified, right, by admission. Now, granted, I don't know how they pull all the data together, but this is in America only. But I'm assuming they recognized it was, falsified by their own admission, meaning lack of evidence and then guilt admission. So that leaves like 90%, which is pretty real. And look, I'm gonna be real, dude. I grew up in America. Everybody went to and I wasn't always practicing, so we went out to the clubs and it was pretty normal to just grab on a chick or it wasn't like, and the thing is like guys think like, hey, like if this chick is in the club, it means this broad wants to be grabbed. Like, she wants to be like touched. Why else would she be here? And they have that mentality like, hey, you know what? I'm going to get that tonight. I'm going to get that. And, and they do try to get a little aggressive sometimes. I've seen it. You know what I mean? I wasn't that kind of person, but I've seen friends do it. I've seen like dudes in the club do it. I've seen bartenders, club owners. I've seen a lot of people do that kind of stuff, and it's real though. I can, I've seen women get in real awkward positions in real life. You know what I mean? And I think that translates to some stuff that really happens,
Yeah. You mentioned that I think you were referring to there's like an infographic, right, where it shows like with like 100 people and it shows you like it colors the picture. This many are true and this many are false and the others are
no.
not
I actually got a report. I actually like a whole study. Yeah. No, I don't go by those bullshit Facebook memes and people write those things all the time. It's bullshit. You know what I mean?
Okay, so there was a graphic that went viral on social media talking about exactly what you're talking about, and that particular statistic, that graphic is based on the study that you're talking about. I'm looking at a Washington Post article right now, and it says basically that the entire methodology between for how those statistics were counted are all wrong. Yeah. So basically, the way those statistics were reported were in an intellectually dishonest way. Now, I've spoken to prosecutors and criminal defense attorneys, and they say that, like, if you ask a prosecutor, okay, how many of these rape accusations are true? Yeah, they'll tell you like maybe about 40%. Okay. And how many do you know that are absolutely false? They'll say, we know for sure that the rape accusation is false, maybe about, 10 to 15, 20% of the time. That leaves 50%, where there's a gray area, okay? And, in that gray area is basically a he said, she said, where a lot of women, put themselves into compromising situations, and then like they'll get blackout drunk, they'll go home with a guy, they'll have sex with him, whatever situation you want to talk about. Like that Stanford rape case where the guy was he was on the swim team or something, and in that case, and this happened, the sentencing was last year, I believe. In that case, both of them were intoxicated. So how many of these rape accusations are based on people behaving like degenerates and then waking up the next morning and regretting it after? So we can't call all of these, like we can't say that the majority of rape accusations are true. Because, on the, like if it comes to a he said, she said, I would say as a population, men lie 50% of the time and women lie 50% of the time, right? It was just general probability. There is no, like a vagina doesn't give you magical powers of truth. Like, yeah, it's not your vagina is not the lasso of truth. Women lie and men lie. Okay.
No, I get you, but I mean, I think here's the thing. I mean, I think the reason why people sympathize with women more is because they've understood, that generally men are generally more aggressive. I mean, right? If you see a woman, you go after her, right? And men can be, consistent and persuasive, right? They're usually there, and women tend sometimes to fall into the character because they want to, they want to be on the next date, or they want to be the cool girl, and it's easy for men to sometimes get women or coerce them into doing, coming to a party or having a drink, or stuff like that. It is, but here's the biggest thing, and this is the honest to God truth. When it comes to rape and sexual abuse, it's very hard to prove that in court unless there's been like some type of bona fide evidence, like recorded on camera or like eyewitness testimony, right? But generally the problem is many women don't report this right away because the general response is that, they're ashamed, right? They don't, I mean, if it does happen, in fact, it's real, they're ashamed of either they're partly because of their behavior and partly because of what happened, right? Like they probably think just like you did, hey, maybe I shouldn't have gotten too drunk. Maybe I shouldn't have, smiled at that guy that way, or they start thinking like this, right? Like what can they blame themselves for, right? And to your credit, part of that is true, right? I mean, if you don't want to get robbed, don't walk with a $50 bill hanging out your back pocket, right? If it's hanging out your ass, someone's going to rob you, right? I mean, it's just simple. But at the end of the day, we have law and order, right? Just because you can do something doesn't mean that man should do it, right? I mean, there still has to be some type of accountability for a guy, right? You have to know that, hey, even if a woman is ass drunk out there in the street, you don't go just, upskirt her and, down on the back alley because you can get away with it, right? You just don't do that, right? It's not normal, right? So yes, are there certain things that women do that make them more susceptible to being a target? Absolutely there is, right? But at the same time, I'm also going to argue that, that the reason why a lot of these cases go unsolved is because it's hard to corroborate evidences. And usually you have cases like, for example, Bill Cosby, where it takes like 80 women to come forward, and none of those women individually could have made a case against Bill Cosby. But collectively, the court decided, hey, you know what? Different point, different time, unrelated. They don't know each other, similar stories. It's got to be true. You know what I mean? It's kind of like this whole mutawatir thing, right? In a sense.
Well,
you know what
okay,
I mean?
yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Let's deal with the So as a community, we can only deal with the numbers that we have in front of us to make judgment calls, right? So whenever we say, a lot of women might be raped and they're not reporting it because they're ashamed. And I admit that this might be true, but the problem is that we don't know. We're speculating, right? We can only go based on the facts that we have, and then at a lower level, at an individual level, we can only go based on anecdote. But we can't use our anecdotes to make claims about truth claims. So for example, Mort, you know 5 women. Let's say 20 women. Okay, 20 women who've been raped, and only one of them went to the police. 5 of them shouted about it on social media, and 14 of them just remained silent for whatever reason. Just because you have that experience of 20 women, you can't expand that out onto the entire population. Does that make sense to you, like logically?
No. I mean, of course, it's not an accurate cross section of all of society and all the cases, apparently, and that's one of the key challenges with these types of cases, that they're very individual. Like, I mean, they're not static, right? Each case is dynamic, and each case has its own circumstances, right? And so I do agree with that. Like, to what extent did the woman get involved? To what extent did she, did she play in this entire event, right? And to what point did the man do this?
Yeah.
Were there drugs involved, alcohol? How many people were involved? How long has it been going on? Because generally what we can say is, in proven rape cases, a lot of times rape is done by people that they actually know. It's not some random
Yeah.
stranger in the street. They actually have some type of relationship with this individual, whether it's work or family or friendship, but there's some type of trust that is established. And I think that's when people who are predators, like legitimate, I'm talking about, they feed on that. Like, they think that now I've got somebody where I want them, because I have that power that I can do something. I know they're not going to report me, right? So I think,
Yeah.
but I think that we have to be careful too, because we can't just go around telling our daughters that every man's going to rape you, right? I mean, you don't want to make them
Exactly.
grow up like fearful of men, right? And fearful of being a woman, right? Like women, and that's personally what I feel like is happening now.
Yeah. Okay, let's just take a real quick break. I'm going to go through the comments. I know people have been very active. Thank you for being active in the comments. Please hit the like button. How many people are in the chat? There are quite a few people watching. But please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you want to get notified, and hit the bell as well if you want to get notified next time we go live. So who's in here? Salam Ammar, what's good? Bubbles says, Nabil looks like less of a cunt on video than he does on Twitter. I guess he has a baby face. To which I replied,
Is she getting
Bubble,
on you? Is that like a?
if she says less of a cunt, that means she thinks I'm very attractive. She's just trying to
That's
seem
code
like,
word for you're hot.
she's, yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I asked Bubbles to send me her marriage CV, but she said that we're incompatible, which means that we're actually compatible, and she says she's too liberal, which is fine. You can pay me to marry you, and you can be my sugar mama if you want. That's pretty liberal, right? Fahad is in here. Assalamu alaikum. What's good? Our boy Sayyid Rahman, the Muslimic Rambo. Have you seen Syed on Facebook going through the gun ranges, man?
I think he follows me on. I think
Man, the
this is.
dude is like, bro, he's literally commando. Like, he goes in with like a Mr. Rogers cardigan, and he's doing like John Wick shit.
Oh
Dude is
yeah.
next level. All he needs is some bad guys to do those judo moves where he goes into the arm bar and shoots you in the head.
So it's like Delta Force, like the new 2018.
Yeah. He's like, yeah.
Wait,
Delta.
who's this Fahad guy thing? All men are trash. Like I just
No,
recognize.
Fahad is one of my readers. He's American Zabiha on Twitter.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Oh, I think
Yeah,
I know Bubbles. I think I know her. She's one of my Twitter, like in Twitter GCs, I think.
cool.
Yeah.
So you know what? Another thing that I wanted to mention, because Bubbles mentioned that men are in fact more violent. I don't think the data proves that. In fact, I just read an article I saw an article a few weeks ago that says that in the medieval world, or whenever like female queens, female monarchs were responsible for the majority of the wars. Okay, that's one example. And another example, let me bring it back to, for example, domestic violence. So we're in a marriage situation. Okay, how many khutbas have you heard about domestic violence in the Muslim community? It seems like every other week it's like the guy is like shouting at the men. The khatib is like, shitting on the men, talking about, okay, stop, beating your wives, as if the guy in Jumu'ah is gonna go home and smack his wife upside the head because the biryani doesn't have boiled eggs in it. What the data shows is the complete opposite. Okay, so there's this longitudinal study done over several years with around 14,000 couples, right? Just under 14,000 couples, which shows that in about 40 something percent of relationships, there is non-reciprocal violence. That means only one party is being violent, okay? And in 70% of those relationships, they found that the woman is the aggressor. So do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So when there is when only one party in a relationship is violent, 70% of the time, the woman is the one being violent. Okay. And in relationships where there is mutual violence, where they're both like, beating on each other, women are twice as more likely as men to initiate violence. Okay. So the number is 2-1.
All right.
So,
Well, to be fair here, I think to the listeners, if you could, like, when you publish this, if you could, like, provide the reference, because I think people are like, "Yo, where are you getting this from? Is this complete
yeah, I
bullshit?
can
Are you
when
making
I
this
drop
shit
the
up as
show
you go
notes.
on?" You know what I mean? Like,
Well, I'll drop the link in the chat. But I mean, I'll publish the infographic on the show. It's actually on my blog.
Okay,
when I
cool.
interviewed Abu American. So like
Yeah, no,
whatever
no
I
doubt.
say, like yeah, whatever I say, like I'll only say if I actually know about it and if I've read something about it. Like I won't pull stuff out of my ass the way Muslim feminists do. So we have that advantage as Muslim men.
No, but here's the interesting thing. I remember being in the hospital recently for my father, and I was in the bathroom, and on the wall they had like this thing about reporting domestic abuse. Okay, and in that form or whatever it was, it said 1 in 6 men are victims of spousal abuse, and I was kind of surprised. I'm like, but again, does that mean like I don't know if that has to do with like, just verbal abuse as well too, right? Or if it's just, physical abuse and how many of those are like gay men who have like male partner. I don't know, you know what I mean? The exact specifics of the data, but here's what I was going to ask you. Do you think that there are some women that take advantage of the fact that they know a man is going to delay like trying to use violence on her because it's a woman? Because I'll be honest, like I've been in a position where a woman was all up in my face, like barking, "Yo, you dumbass nigga, fuck you, I'm gonna whoop your ass, nigga," and like in my face like this. I'm like, "Yo, woman, get away from me! Like I don't want to touch you. I don't want to talk to you. Move away from me." And she's getting in my face and she puts her hand like on my face like this and tries to push me back. And my initial response was just to shove. No one touches my head. You know what I mean? And she's already barking in my ear. I can feel her stank breath like in my face. You know what I mean? So I just shoved her away. And like, she tumbled down a little bit and I walked away. Like my only response was to get away from a crazy woman, right? Granted, it might have been a hood rat or whatever, right? She was just mad that I didn't want to give her no money, right? I mean, like, because she was one of them, bums, or I told her, "I'll give you food. I'm not going to give you money," right? Anyways, but I think there's certain women that do take advantage of the fact that men are not going to hit them, and they try to push that envelope, right? And I think that can be. I'm not saying it's all women. I'm not saying women who get beat or who are abused always behave that way, but I think that there is a certain faction of women that have this idea that, if I know he's not going to hit me, I can push that envelope. Do you know what I'm saying? And I think that's really dangerous if there's women that do that, because then what happens is when you threaten violence back, you look like the bad guy. And here's the funny thing before I want to let you talk too, but I watched this social experiment thing, and there's one guy and one girl. Okay. And the guy was walking with the girl in the beginning of the social experiment, and the guy is like pushing her and like, shoving her, pulling her arm. And everyone's like, whoa, stop that. What are you doing? How you hit a woman? Like men got up from everywhere. And like they were jumping across the street from the trees, coming all over to defend this, to be a savior. So then, they reversed it. The guy's walking down the street and the woman starts punching him. Like actually the woman was abusing the guy worse than what he was doing to her in the beginning part. Punching him, slapping him, kicking him in the thighs, shoving him into the wall. Like, and the funny thing was like people took out like video cameras and like were recording it and laughing at it and like clowning the guy for being beat up by a woman. And to me, I'm like, yo, there's a clear double standard. Like, what if that guy is legitimately like weaker than that woman? Like, what if he legitimately doesn't want to hit that woman back? He's not a kind of guy that likes violence. It was almost like it was socially acceptable for a woman to beat up a man. Right. But and it really, it shouldn't be. I mean, because violence is never okay. Right. I mean, you shouldn't be using violence if you don't want violence being used on yourself. right? The golden rule, essentially. But I think there's a clear hypocrisy in the way society views abuse of men and abuse of women.
Yeah. 100% agree with you. Women manipulate the fact that men are taught from a young age it's never okay to hit a woman. Yeah, but I don't think we have that concept in Islam, because when your personal space is violated, okay, there are some general rules, right? So, for example, let me give you a wartime example. And I'm not trying to, make an interpretation on what is
Yeah,
halal and
we're not at
haram.
war with women, dude.
Yeah. So, for example, this is from the Sirah. So, like, just take take what you will from it. When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam marched against Bani Nadir, right? It was a siege, right? They bunkered down in their fort, and they thought they could last for a long time because they have their date palms, and they could last for a long time. They could last a long siege. All right. So they were using their date orchards as a sort of like a backup measure, that they know that, okay, these Muslims, they don't do scorched earth tactics, so we can just chill in our fort, and we don't have to go out and fight them, and then eventually they'll go away. All right. So what did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? Even though scorched earth tactics are haram in general, he burnt down the palm trees, or he asked them to cut down the palm trees, right? So when our Sharia is used against us, right? Or when our morals and ethics are used against us, yeah. There's also this hadith that said a Muslim should never allow himself to be dishonored, right? Or demeaned, or disregarded, or however you want to translate it. So there are situations where somebody gets in your personal space, all right, and if somebody seems like they're going to be violent, which I'm sure, like a chicken head from the hood is always on the verge of being violent if they're yelling at the top of their lungs. Like, I think you have every right to defend yourself. And if somebody puts their hands on you, I think you have every right to defend yourself. And what level of, verbal abuse is, relevant, or like what is the level? It really depends on the situation. But I mean, Bubbles makes a good point. It's like we should stop seeing genders, just stand against injustice in general, men, women, who cares? I agree with you, Bubbles. So, like, imagine if a guy, like a guy was doing the exact same, yelling at you, right? How would you react? React the same way with a woman. I mean, it's not like we're living in this chivalrous time, right? Where there is a certain social contract where women behave like women and men behave like men. The social contract, implicit in the social contract, is men being like men and women being like women. When the women stop behaving like women and start acting like men, we'll treat them like men. I think that's fair, right?
No, I think for the most part you're right, but I'm gonna tie it back to my own personal morality, and that is, even a guy. I've been in fights when I was younger, and if I'm whooping the shit out of this guy, and I know I got him down, I'm walking away. I'm not gonna beat the guy into a pulp. I'm not gonna submit him, break his arms. I've been at a time where I whooped the shit out of some people, and I could have done more, but I just kept it moving. I'm not gonna kick him on the ground, beat a dead horse, right? So I think the same thing applies to a woman, right? If I feel like I am threatened by a woman who's going to cause me physical harm myself, I will defend myself, because I love myself more than anybody else, right? So I will defend myself, right? But I'm not going to transgress that. I'm not going to, use excessive force upon her. I'm just going to guarantee my safety and then get away from it. So my intention is to de-escalate a situation, not to escalate it, right? And I think that the problem is a lot of people, they become very emotional. And I know we're going to talk about something like this later on in the show, but I think Muslims in general, and human beings in general have just become way too emotional, like they're triggered by everything. And when you make decisions based on emotions and not logic, you are 99% of the time going to, just mess up. And so I really feel like that as a man, and one of the characteristics of a man, a rijala, is basically that, you know what, I'm going to stay calm and make a decision and be collective and make the best decision for the outcome, right? In my situation, I'm not going to become emotional. I'm not going to start, making irrational decisions, but I'm going to be calm and collective and then do what I need to do to get out of the situation and then keep it moving, right? I think that's the composure of a man, at least the way I was brought up and the way I was taught, but I agree. I mean, I think that if they want to be equal and they want to have everything, laid out for them in an equal manner, then they should be prepared to accept the consequences of having that mindset, in a sense that if you want complete equality, then expect a man to deal with you the way he would deal with other men. And that includes not just violence, but in terms of cutting the line, opening the doors, you know what I mean? Like stuff like this, even talking in a voice louder than you, right? I mean, for example, for me, in our culture, we're taught you don't go yell at a woman and talk down on her because, it's not that way. But if you're gonna treat me like a man, I'm probably gonna respond to you the way I would respond to a man, which is pretty much in sarcasm and humor and just shit on the guy for a little bit, and walk away, right? So I think that they have to understand that there's a certain trade-off here, and they have to be ready to accept that.
Yeah, I think that's quite that's fair. Because these social dynamics or gender dynamics, they're fairly new, right? It's only in the past maybe 10, 15, 20 years that they've been happening. People haven't adjusted yet. So what's happening is what I see, Muslim women want to have their cake and eat it too. So they want all the protections afforded to them as Muslim women with none of the responsibilities. So they want all the freedoms of kafir women, okay? But they want the protections and allowances that Muslim women are afforded. It doesn't work that way, okay? It doesn't work that way. I think let's move on to another topic. So we started covering about Muslims being emotional. So I think now is a good time to talk about the Muslim IQ stuff.
Yeah. So actually, a good friend of mine. He's actually, I think he's in the YouTube chat. He's a Twitter buddy of mine, and I've known him for a little while. And he actually pointed me to some references that there have been studies done about like Middle Eastern IQ and even in general Muslim IQ and how that relates to intelligence and progress and innovation and achievements. And what we find is that now, granted, I haven't really fact checked majority of these researchers and I haven't really dove too deep into it, but from the preliminary, the IQ of the Muslim world is pretty much shit. I mean, like they're like in the 80 to 85 range, right? Which is not retarded, but I mean, you're pretty much, you're almost there, right? If you fall in like a 70 range, like you're below par, like you're severely like limited in what you can do, right? In terms of achieving life. And the IQ is a measurement of not so much, it's your ability to problem solve and use logic, right? One of the key essence that a human being has is to use his brain function to use logic and rational reason. And so I know there's an idea of multiple intelligence theories about, for example, emotional intelligence and verbal intelligence, et cetera, et cetera. But this is specifically dealing with the ability to problem solve and use and make logical conclusions. And that is probably the most important for success in life, right? Because all these other things don't really matter. So when it comes to that is, I mean, Muslims are really far behind. And granted, there are external factors. I mean, some of these studies might indicate genetic correlation or even skin tone, whatever it may be, right? Granted, some of them are biased, but I also believe that some of it is also based on your environment, meaning nurture, not always nature. But for that reason, for whatever reason it is, but I think that's one of the reasons why Muslims in general have become so emotional. Whenever we hear something like, for example, I'll give a small example of this. Some stupid idiot in Florida was gonna like burn a Quran, right? For some stupid ass pastor who died anyways, right? And everyone went crazy. Ah, why is he doing that, right? I felt like saying, shut the fuck up, you dumbass Muslims. Like, you're so fucking dumb. Who cares? You know what I mean? Like, let him burn it. How is that going to make any difference to you? If you had half a brain, you would know not to, like, you know what I mean? Like, even give this guy an ounce of attention. He's only doing it for attention. He's a nobody. The guy wants money. The same thing happened with Charlie Hebdo. You know, if Muslims didn't do nothing about that magazine would have been bankrupt. They were already on the verge of bankruptcy, right? But because of the fact that Muslims went ahead and got so crazy about that shit, they actually rebooted Charlie Hebdo. Like, it got a lot of funding, right? And this is what I'm talking about. Like, we are unable to use logic in order to assess a situation and see which way we should go. Our automatic response is emotion. And this happens on Twitter all the time. Like, somebody was making a tweet of this group, right? Was saying, hey, maybe we should question some of the hadith in Bukhari, right? The immediate response was, look at this murtad kafir, ha ha. I mean, bro, calm down. You know what I mean? Like, this is not the first person that has, challenge the authenticity of Bukhari. Like, this is normal. You know what I mean? If you look to the ulama and people in the past, but the fact that people can't think with their brain, their immediate response is to say, kafir, murtad, kill him, hudud. Yeah, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, just chill, nigga. Like, take a break. You know what I mean? Like, just chill. You know what I mean? Relax. Use your brain for a moment. And I think this could be a symptom of having a low IQ. And I don't know. Is there a way to change that? Is there a way to bring a quote renaissance to the Muslim world? Like, can we focus on education instead of building, high buildings, like, skyrocket buildings, and driving, or spending $1 billion on a license plate? Can we spend that $1 billion on a school and an environment where it helps you to be free thinkers and not like ban like philosophy and like, just natural things that we learn in the West that help us, come to logical conclusions? We lack that in the Muslim world. And it's really sad, in my opinion. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I think there's definitely an environmental component, because if you watch Joe Rogan's interview with Colin McGuinness, even though he hates, really, he's a Islam hater, hates Islam and Muslims, but he basically goes through all of the statistics that you just mentioned in general right now. So the clip is on there, it's on YouTube. It's like, Colin McGuinness blows Joe Rogan's mind on IQ. All right, so the data is out there. And another thing I find is that the amount of education that you're exposed to has an effect on your IQ down the line. And I don't have any actual data for this. I remember reading it somewhere, so just take that with a grain of salt. So what happens is, the less educated you are, the more prone you are to emotional overreactions. And that applies for religious education as well. There's the ulama say, the more a person studies, the more lenient he becomes. Yeah. The more a person studies Sharia, the more lenient he becomes, and the less argumentative he becomes, because he understands how much flexibility there is in the faith. You find, and again, this is also something that I've read, you find that the more religious ignorance there is, the more emotional and extreme the community is in their reaction to differences of opinion. So for example, if you go to a Hanafi mosque in India, in rural India, and when you're doing the tashahhud and you do this, right, you shake your finger. One of my friends said that they were praying in a Hanafi mosque one time and they broke his finger, because he's praying like a Wahhabi, yeah. Like if you pray without the topi on, and to an extent, that is the fault of the person who makes that mistakes, because you don't go into a Hanafi mosque and deliberately, for example, pray opposite to a Hanafi, because you're going to cause fitna. Because from the sunnah is leaving a sunnah for the sake of unity. Yeah, the unity of the Muslims is above following a sunnah. The unity of the Muslims is wajib. This is general. We're not total degenerates. We do have a little bit of inclination towards religion. So where the hell was I? What was I saying? Back to the IQ thing. So the more uneducated you are, the more strict you are with your religious opinions, and the more disagreeable you are when it comes to differences of opinion. Yeah, and that applies to secular education as well. People might be well read in the religious aspects of Islam, but they're totally oblivious to realities on the ground. And we see this a lot with gender. So, for example, and you just stop me whenever you want to jump in, okay? Because I know I'm going on and on, right? For example, you have a group of Muslim men, and I would say this is the majority of Muslim men. They have an idyllic and idealistic view of the way Muslim women are. They put Muslim women on a pedestal, okay? When the reality is that Muslim men and Muslim women are especially if you live in the West, we're just like non-Muslim men and women, okay? Yeah. We have the same, dysfunctions, yeah? For some reason, Muslim men haven't caught on to that fact yet. They haven't caught on to the changes in social dynamics. They haven't caught on to the fact that the media bombardment that is happening to Muslim women day in and day out, and also to Muslim men. They still think that Muslim women are this, demure, docile, submissive, agreeable, whatever. Okay? And the social contract has already broken down, but Muslim men haven't realized it. Muslim men are still on our...
They think that when they get married, that's all going to go back to the way it was. Like they're like, oh, when I get married, the girl's supposed to be that way. But the girl's going to be like, yo, I've been living this way my whole goddamn life. You must be crazy if you think I'm going to go back and do that. Like, and I get that. Like, there's a real disconnect. And this kind of goes back to the whole thing. Like, oh, I got to marry. I mean, now granted, like, here's the thing. If you're going to go out and you're going to mess around and sleep with women, right? You better not expect to marry a virgin girl. I'm just putting it out like that, because you can't have that same standard, right?
50-50.
Like, yo, I'm gonna get this. Yeah, exactly. If you're gonna play around, dip your pen in the company ink, well, then expect that in return. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how it is, right? And they get pissed. Oh, I gotta find this virgin. She's gotta be like this. She gotta be like that. No, stupid. Right? you don't get to make that choice. You know what I mean? Like,
bro, even the niqabis are out here doing dirt, dude.
Bro, trust me, I know. Bro, listen, I know of dude, there were girls, certain Arabic girls. I remember, I hate to say this because I hate shitting on my own people, but they would straight say, you know what? Hey, let's get on, but just give it to me in the booty, because I'm trying to keep the other part intact, my vagina intact. And I'm sitting here like, yo, what? Like, what? You know what I mean? Like, this is crazy. You know what I mean? Like, the fact that, and this is also, I don't know about other cultures, but in the Arabic culture, we have something that's in the aib culture, like the aib. So aib meaning that it's bad or to know or like it's shameful, but it's only aib when you get caught. If you don't get caught, it's not aib. Right. So it's not really like there's a moral guiding principle, right? Like if you, like, for example, if you weren't a virgin, it's not a big deal. But if somebody finds out that you're not a virgin, oh, aib, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like for yourself anymore. It's for other people. You know what I mean? Like, it's not even like that no more. So I think a lot of these factors is that Muslims generally tend to live two lifestyles. They live one outside the house and then one inside the house, right? Like among their family and friends, right? And so sometimes when that cross like that whole the alter egos like cross paths, you have a problem, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, did you see what that guy was doing? He's got a, he was out with a white broad, you know what I mean? He's out with that Puerto Rican girl, you know what I mean? They flip out, you know what I mean? And then then everyone's like, I mean, it's just, the fact is that unfortunately, I think a lot of girls and guys who are Muslims, they have this identity conflict because they cannot be themselves. And if they are themselves, like, it's looked down upon. And I think people need to come to terms with reality that, we're brought up in the West and not everybody's religious. And, you're going to have people that live a certain way. I don't agree with it, but it is the way it's going to happen. Right. And if they want to find people the way they are, let them do it. You know what I mean? They can find people for them and be down with that or whatever. You don't have to hide your stuff anymore. Unfortunately, there are many people who are culturally Muslim. I'm not going to call them mulhiddin or atheists, but they are not really practicing, but they're culturally Muslims. You get what I'm saying? Like, and so if they want to find somebody else that's culturally Muslim and get on with it, let them do it. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I think that, being a practicing Muslim is generally very tough in America or in the Western world in general. And especially in a country, in a society where not just Islam, but all religion is under attack constantly. Like, they're moving away from religion, away from God, and they're pretty much challenging everything that religion has brought forth. So that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to get over ourselves. Like, we think that we're so much better than than the people around us, but really we're not. Yes, we should try to be. We should try to strive to be better people. Okay, and there are people who succeed at doing that. But at the same time, we should be honest with ourselves about, our levels. Like, we shouldn't think of ourselves as, okay, like if you're a degenerate, like, don't think you're equal to like a sheikh who's like, very, not even a sheikh, just a regular Muslim who is very pious, and there's, nothing bad that could be said about him. The problem is that we are good Muslims. Yeah. We justify our shortcomings with, hashtag don't judge me. And we think that we're equivalent to Muslims who are much better than us. And that takes a lot of self-awareness, right? That takes a lot of humility. That takes a lot of intellectual and spiritual humility. So I think, we just need to, have an honest conversation with ourselves about our levels, and like I said, I actually prefer those Muslims who are just honest about, yeah, I go shisha. It's not, I'm not trying to be like, a wali of Allah, even though that they should be, but they don't fake the funk, especially online. They don't fake the funk in public. Yeah, they said, yeah, I have my shortcomings. I'm trying to do better, but like this is me. And I have a post on my blog called "How to Be Authentically You and Authentically Muslim." Like, Islam didn't come to turn us into the Borg, right? We're not supposed to be like this one monolithic entity. We're allowed to have our individualities. We're allowed to have our shortcomings. We're allowed to be human. Yeah. Because after the prophets, nobody is perfect. We're allowed to be human, to have our own individual strengths and our weaknesses, as long as we're cognizant of the fact that we're all works in progress, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think, like I said, you hit on a point which is interesting, is that Muslims think that automatically they're like holy because because they're non-Muslims and I'm a Muslim, so I'm holy automatically. Like, I'm just better than everybody else and I'm holy, right? And the reality is that no, you're not, bitch. You know what I mean? Like, you're just not. You know what I mean?
Even
like,
brother, yeah.
Yeah. I'm calling brothers and women. I mean, just in terms of anybody, right?
You're all bitches.
Yeah, you're all bitches to me, right? You know what I mean? But the thing is, like, I just want to touch on a point that you mentioned earlier. Like, I think of the fact is that Muslims are also ignorant of common like basic science nowadays too. And like people who are highly intellectual and knowledgeable about religious sciences are not about the secular sciences. And I'll give you an example of this. Like in Saudi, there was a sheikh who came out and said women can't drive. He was defending the women ban, the driving ban, because of the fact that when a woman holds her hands like this, the positioning of her body, and then her being in the angle of her pelvis, when she hits a bump, it's going to damage her uterus. So I'm sitting and listening to this, and I'm like, what? What are you talking about? You know, and like they will come up with the most ridiculous things in order to defend their religious positions, when in fact they're not even rooted in Islam. I mean, meaning like a matter of aqaid, yani like it's part of your aqidah to actually have to believe in this, right? It's simply a matter of preference for them. That this is the opinion of or of our imam or shaykhana. We take this opinion and that's it. But the fact is, they make up things as they go on, and it's just mind blowing to me that people just go along with it, right? And I think collectively as Muslims, we should say, when that sheikh says that, with all due respect, sheikh, that's bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, just don't just take. I mean, because you know he knows what he knows in terms of religious sciences, not in religious. I mean, in secular sciences, and unfortunately, and you know, in Islam, we're not prohibited from learning what is beneficial for us in this dunya too, right? Meaning that we advance, we know things can be haram and halal dependent on what we know about them being good and bad for us, right? And if something is not bad for us, then there's no problem, right? But so I think to we have to rectify that you know there's going to be people who know certain things and don't know other things, and we have to kind of work together and recognize that, hey, you know what, we're all struggling in this mess right now, right? We've really found ourselves in this mess where we lack intellectualism, we lack innovation, we lack ingenuity, we lack sincerity, right? We lack unity. I mean, we're really a shitstorm right now. I mean, it's really sad that you can't go to any Muslim country. We don't even make our own freaking underwears, dude. I mean, I'm talking about like the Arabs now for right now, right? You know, I mean, sure, it may be Bangladesh or Pakistan, right? They're in textiles, but in general, outside of Asia, dude, they don't even make underwear. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, I mean, we have nothing to show, and I think that.
I mean, to be fair, we want the Muslim women wearing the Victoria's Secret, right? When the
Yeah, we want them to, you know, to look nice. I mean, you know,
the wives, not the girlfriends.
Yeah, not the side pieces. We're talking about like the actual wives, right? But the thing is, I mean, in relevant is that, you know, I mean, here's another thing. Can you name me any Muslim country that actually makes a car? I think Iran is like one of them, but like it's like a Ford Fiesta, like it's just complete shit. I think Syria tried to make one, but we can't. Can you imagine in 2018 we don't even manufacture our own car? You know, you know what I mean? Like that kind of backwardness is troubling to me. I feel like if we pass that on to the next generation, they're just going to be born idiots, like absolute retards, like degenerates. Like they're just going to be people who are welfare leeches and, you know, just incapable of doing anything for themselves. And we got to change that. It's up to like the new youth, the younger generation to open your minds, be tolerant of different ideas. I'm not saying lose your identity, but be able to listen to ideas and extract what is good from that, right? Because that is important. If you look at the golden age of Islam, we were able to hear the arguments of the Ahl al-Kalam and people who were scientists and whatever, and extract beneficial knowledge, and then also even pass that on, translate it, pass it on, and then also add to it because we understood what was being taught to us, right? But that has all gone down the drain now. But anyways, yeah. Anyways, that's just my thought on that. I think we probably beat that into a dead horse. The fact that Muslims are low IQ degenerates, and we need to fix that problem. Otherwise, you know, we're just gonna end up like a bunch of savage monkeys in the desert.
Yeah. Cool. Let's take a short break to check the chat. Please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell number.
Oh, look at that. Yo, Murtaza, bro, Muslims on Twitter believe that everything will be fixed by so-called khilafah. This is another thing too, right? I mean, look, I'm not shitting on the idea of a khilafah and like the idea of an Islamic state, but in my opinion, um, like there are people who think that everything is going to be like utopia if you have just one thing, right? It's kind of like the Arabs who also believe, or Muslims, that, hey, you know, if the Jews didn't, if they weren't here, everything would be fine. You know what I mean? Like, no, it's not it's not a one answer thing, right? I mean, you can't do that. I mean, even during the Khilafah of the Khulafa Rashidun, there were areas of problem, right? I mean, it wasn't like some, you know, utopian lifestyle. There was harsh conditions, there was problems, there was moral dilemmas, all of that, right? So what makes you think that in 2018, you know, some guy mimicking Rambo and then like implementing hudud on everybody he sees because he has a different opinion is going to somehow make the world a better place? Are you going to solve the fact that there's infidelities, that rape happens in the Muslim world, that child abuse happens, that people are cheating, they're taking muraba'ah? I mean, are you going to solve any of these issues? No. I mean, at the very least, you're probably going to force them into fear, and then they're eventually going to end up rebelling against you and kicking your ass, right? And then going back exactly the opposite direction. This is exactly what happened with a dawla, right? In Iraq and Sham. What happened was they thought, oh, we're going to force Sharia on everybody. You know, we're going to come out like, you know, they literally thought they were living like in the days of the Sahaba, where they were going to come out and ride on horses and record everything and like stab people and force them into Islam, right? And take ghanima and jizya. But what ended up happening now? More Muslims now hate the idea of having a khilafah or an Islamic state, or even you mentioned Khalif, they will say, La'natullah alayk. Yeah, they don't want to even waja rasti, get away from me. You know what I mean? They don't even want to deal with you. You know what I mean? Like, so that idea of that we're going to somehow come together as some, you know, a bunch of Rambos and like, you know, and just take over the world and then make it better instantaneously is stupid. Stop thinking about that. You know, you have to actually make yourself productive. You know, put yourself in a position where you are an example to lead the world. Right? Any of the khulafa that came in, I mean, Rashidun that were there, they were chosen because they were known to be examples. People could look at their actions and say, that man needs to lead us, right? And this is exactly how Rasulullah came to lead over Medina. The people felt confident that, hey, that man in Mecca, according to his character, he can lead us. We agree to that, right? He didn't have to come in and like essentially take over everything and then force them into submission and then make them believe, right? I think that it's really childish, in my opinion. Yeah, exactly, Bubba. They glamorize it. They glamorize the old days where they're gonna take, you know, milkul yamin and ghanima, and they're gonna, like, you know, I mean, it's just, I mean, look, don't get me wrong. It sounds great back in the days, right? I mean, hey,
sorry, man. Back when Daesh accounts were allowed on Twitter, I remember tweeting out that first time I heard about Minder, you know, the Muslim version of Tinder, right? It's like, yo, they got a Muslim version of Tinder. And then this Daesh account tweets me back, do they got Sabaya? Sabaya means slaves. So, like, yo, what? And then there was another tweet I remember where the guy was like, yo, I'm saving up my salary until we get to Lebanon, man. I'm trying to get these Lebanese bitches.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, you're right.
I was like, yo, what?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is, like, what happened in the past, what was, look, there's certain parts of our past that are even un-Islamic that we don't condone, but there's even the things that we do condone. There's a certain time and place for everything, right? And I'm sorry to break it to you, little brother, but right now you're not going to go out and you're not going to go ahead and win anybody's hearts and minds by just blowing shit up and forcing your way into a city gate and, you know, like catapulting yourself over the city gate and trying to liberate all the women and children. I mean, it's not going to happen that way, right? The more you do that, the more you make Islam look savagely, the more you look Middle Easterners look stupid, the more, and you're wasting your time. It's not going to get us that way. I'm not saying that you don't have to look. I think that a person who's making an honest jihad, defending himself, is noble, but going out and being unreasonable, right, and just simply going out for the sake of trying to live a dream and reenact this vision that you have is not noble. It's stupid. It's in danger. You have hurt countless Muslims who are not even affected by your physical actions, but the byproduct of what you've done. Look at the profiling of Muslim women in Europe, in America. How much I'm talking about legitimate Islamophobia against them, assaulted, right? All because your dumbass decided to be some kind of, Muslimic Rambo, right? And go out there with your Muslimic ray gun and go out and be, the super muzzy, right? And now you just jack it up for everybody else. Stop that childish shit. Behave, like use your brain for once. Stop being emotional. This is how I feel about it. I'm sorry, it might offend people, but shit, I mean, I might even get a bounty on my head too for saying that because people don't like it. But truth is truth,
Yeah. I'm going to read another comment. When we were talking about IQ, Fahad mentioned, I think because Fahad, this is his area of study. He says, IQ is dependent on synaptic plasticity, depends on proteins in brain produce, depends on foods eaten, nutrients eaten, stimulation in critical childhood, infancy, some genetics. Not as simple as it's all Baba and Mama. I agree with you. Because epigenetics is a real thing. Your DNA can be changed by your environment. So that is a good point. He also says, this is why Muhammad Ghilan is a G, neuroscience PhD, and studied Malik effect. I think more and more Muhammad Ghilan has the right idea where you need mastery of the kuffar sciences. Is a stupid way to put it, but really all science is from Allah.
Yeah, shout out to Muhammad G. He's on point. I vibe with him. I think he's on point.
And we need to do the religious study and spiritual study as like basically it should be a lifelong journey. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna stop for 4 years. Before I go to university, I will go to Medina and I will go into Kulliyatul Da'wah or whatever. If you're a Madkhali, you go into Kulliyatul Hadith. And then you just come out.
Actually, go into Kulliyat al-Arabiya because they only learn Arabic and that's it. Then they get out. That's just what happens.
Yeah, and some of these guys don't even graduate. And then you just come back and then your only skills in life are the ability to teach Kitab al-Tawheed, which is it's totally useless to people. Rather, I think we should develop skills. Like you mentioned, our inability to manufacture cars. We should be developing skills that are useful to the community as a whole, and also as individuals. And this is not for the minority of people who actually go into full-time study of Sharia, right? And we should be studying our religion on an ongoing basis from the time we're children until the time we're dead, right? So this is for the lay people, right?
I mean, can you ever say that, hey, I know everything. I know enough about mathematics, or I know enough about biology. Can you ever say that? You really can, right? So why do we say that about Islam, right? You're not going to know. You have to keep going on and on, right? You're always going to learn new things, right? So I agree. I think that we should focus on the practical sciences, meaning things that we actually need to make ourselves more productive, more influential, stable. I mean, one of the reasons why many Muslims have issues with Islam is because of the fact that we have backward fatwas that are limiting, that basically contradict basic science, or like basic human needs in 2018, right? And in my opinion, I'm not a scholar or an alim, but if a fatwa, an opinion, something that is non-binding by an alim, is going to prevent Muslims from remaining Muslims because it's incompatible with 2018, well, throw that shit against the wall, against the wall, dude. I don't want to hear about it, right? Because the first and foremost thing is the person remaining a Muslim, right? Especially in 2018, where it's difficult for someone to hold on to his religion because of I don't think necessarily that Islam is not compatible, but the opinions that are presented are incompatible with 2018. Right. So, and they're overcomplicating Islam. For example, why do I have to study Kitab al-Tawheed for 4 years? I mean, bro, for me, trust me, I was one of those victims. I would debate Aqidah. I would go into the Ash'ara and Mu'tazila and all these things in the Athari. But at the end of the day, I realized, dude, it doesn't really matter, dude. All schools of thought have a very good argument for believing what they believe in. At the end of the day, All of us believe in La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. This is the testimony of faith. If you believe in that, that's enough for me. I mean, aqidah for me now is simple. I can tell somebody aqidah in 5 minutes. That's it. If you have to spend more than 5 minutes on it, dude, you're wasting my time. Get away from me, right? And I think the reason why we spend more time is because we like to complicate it, right? We haven't achieved in anything else. So we dwell on that and say, oh, look how much we know about this, right? There's Tawheed al-Rububiyyah, Tawheed al-Uluhiyyah, wa Asma wa Sifa, wa Hakimiyyah, and then kada wa kada wa kada, right? It goes on, right? And dude, okay, I got that, dude, but is that going to make me money? Brother, if you know Tawheed, you will have money in your bank. Brother, if you know Tawheed, you will have halal income. Wallah, they tell you this stuff. And I'm like, yo, bro, I had this khatib in a local mosque. Everything, every problem. Bro, you could have indigestion. And he's going to say it's because you have bad tawheed. You're not upon the manhaj. And that's why, right? And it's enough. Khalas, yeah, but I mean, enough. We don't want to hear about it anymore. It's driving people away. So I agree 100%.
I also think though that we've at this point, the community, I don't know about the community in the Arab region and in the East, but at least in the West, we've gone to the other extreme where it's like nobody studies their aqidah anymore. And this is the reason why we have liberal Muslims, for example, who believe in secularism and things like that, and feminism and all of these things. They go on women's marches with the pussy hat on, and they go to a court hearing and start shouting at people, and then put themselves into getting arrested by the cops and getting manhandled by non-mahram men. Like, yani, what is from where, yani? And then
you don't change shit. I feel like you don't change nothing. You just made yourself look like an idiot on TV. You dumbass. Stop that shit. You know what I mean? Like, it's not cool. You're not pretty. You're not cute. Stop it. I mean, look, even when it comes to protesting, right? Use your brain. Allah gave you a brain. Like, God created you with a brain to use. Utilize your time in a way that makes a difference, not by doing childish stuff. That the stuff that doesn't get you anything at all. You know what I mean? Like, there needs to be a balance here, man. I don't know what to say in the bill, but it's almost like saddening, like embarrassed. I feel embarrassed for the fact that, we're in this state. Now, I agree with you that there has to be some study about Aqeedah. We have to know what you believe, essentially, right? But do I think it needs 4 years or 5 years or constant fine tuning where you have to read Kitab al-Tawheed every 6 years and then go to Aqidat al-Wasatiyya and then al-Hamawiyya? And no, I mean, I don't think that we have to go do that. You know what I mean? Like, it's just,
and all of those are for back in the day, right? I think that's why one of the reasons why Sheikh Hamza Makul's Eternal Creed project is so important is because he's teaching the classical text, the Tahawiyya, but it's actually by somebody who's competent enough to make it relevant to our times.
Yeah. So I just want to address something that Bubble said real quick. So secularism and feminism are not monolithic, though. Yeah, I know they're not. But the problem is that the effect they have on Muslims that are living in the West, at least in America, is pretty evident. You know what I mean? Like, here's the problem, Bubble. If you have people that are certain feminists that are pushing, for example, LGBTQ stuff. Now, you may not have a problem with that. But for me, I'm not down with it. Right. And I don't think Islam in general is down with that LGBTQ stuff, meaning that I'm not talking about hudud and punishing them and all that. We're talking about generally in terms of accepting the tolerant of that behavior of sodomy and, and just, being immoral in that sense. Right. Islam doesn't really vibe with that too well. So for me as an individual, right, I don't feel like I have to defend any of their positions or encourage any of that. Right, I can be different I can assume that in America or in the West, everybody should be treated equal as per the law of the land. But I don't have to unnecessarily go out and specifically target an LGBTQ movement and then side with them, right? Because what's going to happen now is in the future, if there are the authentic teachings of Islam will tell you that, sodomy is wrong, right? No matter how you look at it, right? Sodomy is wrong. And when they come back to you and say, well, now go and open the Quran and look at sodomy, the Quran is outdated, you have to change it. what am I going to say? Okay, it's wrong. You know, I mean, oh, you're wrong. No, the Quran is right. But they're going to say, look, you had this muhajjaba or that bearded guy. He was an imam and he was standing up for LGBTQ. So he's a real Muslim and now you are a fake Muslim. So they're actually going to make takfir of you and say you're a kafir because you're not a real Muslim.
She's a graduate of SOS Islamic Studies Department, so she's qualified to make homosexuality.
Exactly. Exactly. And so now we end up saying, okay, well, now we're going to change the Quran to suit, we're going to have an American Quran. You know, I mean, we're going to slap yourself in the face with that. You know, I think Muslims in general, you don't have to be combatant. You don't have to be rude, but there's no problem in politely saying, listen, we have our moral principles and you have yours, right? And that this is all within a legal framework. I don't need to support your agenda and you don't have to support mine. I can recognize you as a human being, as an individual, and wish you well in that sense. But don't ask me to come and support everything that you like pro-abortion and transgenderism and, you know, homosexuality and, you know, I don't know, like giving children hormone blockers so they can decide what gender they want to be. You know, stuff like this is a no-no for me. And I hope people get that. I'm not against a woman about manspreading in the West is not the same as a woman wanting to drive. Oh, I agree. I mean, sure. I agree 100%. Feminism is not all the same. There are different waves of feminism. However, the issue is that we're looking at in terms of how the Muslim women in the West are being affected by Western feminism, right? In the East, it's right now, it's a very new phase. Like Nabil mentioned early on, we're like in the baby infant stages of that. And we don't know what the outcome may be of that. Hopefully it's not going to be like America where women are just splashing, you know, bleach and acid on men's crotches because they're not crossing their legs, right? I mean, I hope it doesn't get to that because I think an Arab man would probably slap the shit out of somebody if that happened. But but the reality is that, yeah, go ahead.
Bubbles was like earlier. Bubbles was like, God bless Tunisia for women's rights. This stuff is whack. I lived in Saudi Arabia most of my life. I prefer being a woman in Tunisia. Yo, man, these Tunisian women are freaks. They'll come up to you on the street and grab your ass. Like I heard these Tunisian girls they're freaky like that. But North African
I don't know too much about like Tunisian women or like even like Maghrebiyat or like from Algeria but
they do sihr on you, man. They're famous for doing sihr on you.
I heard that about Morocco. You know, I heard that about that. But you know, look, man, to each their own, right? If some man wants to be dealing with that, by all means, you know, hey, some men like them where it's, you know, it's crazy like that, you know, whatever, you know. But I don't want to generalize about all of them. But the reality is this here. Like, okay, let's look at this. There is a downward trend of degeneration among Muslims today, right? We're just spinning downwards in terms of not just, we already talked about like advancements and like secular sciences. I'm talking about now about even in terms of our religion. We can't even get that right. Like we're just siding with all the wrong people. Like we're like the Chicago Bears, right? Like last season, we just do everything wrong. And even when we have a good game, we end up just shitting ourselves and losing everything, right? Like something is going on. I don't have the answers. I don't have the solutions, but I hope all you guys just wake up and at least see what I'm seeing and say, hey, look, we got to do something or we're going to die off. Like we're just literally going to die off.
Yeah, like I mentioned, I think I mentioned before the call, I have this hypothesis that the Muslim community, whether we're in the West or whether we're in the East, is about 10 years behind the West in terms of ideologically, technologically, socially, and our thought. And we have gone from being idea producers to idea consumers, okay? So when Bubble says that Western feminism and Eastern feminism aren't the same, that's because we are 10 years behind the curve. 10 years from now, you are going to see debates about manspreading in Tunisia. And you're going to talk about man slamming and mansplaining, which a lot of these, you know, the more like it's starting to happen in the UAE as well. So you're going to see these things happen a few years down the line in the Muslim world. It's because we're behind the times intellectually, and we accept uncritically Western ideas, Western ideology, Western thought a priori or a priori without examining the axioms that they're based on. So, for example, Murtaza, you were speaking against Khilafah. I don't agree with all of your opinion. I agree with some of it. But the point is, Muslims as a whole, we have accepted this idea of the nation state without critically examining it. We just accept it. Okay, this is just the way it is, and we shouldn't change it. So it doesn't make sense that way as well, right? Because we have our own intellectual tradition, and our intellectual tradition comes from God Almighty. It's more superior, you know. Yes, we are falling short as a community in terms of our innovation and contribution to humanity as a whole. But I believe that's because we have accepted a non-Muslim frame of mental model, frame of reference, way of thinking, and left the Islamic or Muslim frame of reference, mental model, way of thinking. And it's like that story when Omar went to receive the keys to Jerusalem, and his servant told him to get on and get off, told him to ride the horse and change your clothes because, Sa'd ibn Abi Waqqas, he got to Jerusalem, Sa'd comes out and greets him, and Omar is all dirty from traveling. He says, yo, why don't you put some, and obviously they don't say yo, this is me paraphrasing, astaghfirullah, I'm not trying to disrespect the Sahaba. He says, why don't you put some nicer clothes on, because these are the Romans and yada, yada, yada. And why don't you go in riding on a nice horse? And he says, he's punched him in the chest and says, yo. He didn't say yo. He said, woe unto you, Sa'd. We were nothing. Like, we were the most despised and disgraced people. And Islam elevated us. The minute we turn to other than Islam, Allah will dishonor us again. And I believe that you're seeing the effects of that in the Muslim community as a whole today.
I agree 100%. I think it's actually true. Well, I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, I think we covered that part of it a little bit. Do you want to talk a little bit about
let's do
this whole Kavanaugh thing, and then
let's do Kavanaugh, let's
Joe
do
Bradford?
Joe Bradford, and let's do this Me Too thing as well.
All right, we'll kick it off with Joe Bradford because I think that's really, I mean, you kind of highlighted that, and so I think it's kind of important.
Yeah, I'm gonna drop. I want you guys to check out this Twitter thread that Joe Bradford put out about how Muslims select judges in Islam, and basically it's a fairly long thread, and the highlight of it is the extremely high standards we have in Islam, in our Islamic tradition, for selecting the individual that judges between people and hands out the hudud and solves disputes in the community. It's crazy high. Like, well, let's just read through a little bit of it real quick, and then we'll talk about this Kavanaugh thing that's going on. All right, so I'm loading up the tweets. I'll just read through a few tweets quickly, right? So first, what does a Qadi do or a judge do? A Qadi's basic function is to resolve disputes and allocate rights to litigants. A Qadi retains not only the power to interpret and express what the law is, but the authority to order it be applied by the executive. In order to be appointed, the candidate for a judicial position has to be a free Muslim of legal capacity, of sound mind, and possess high moral probity, which in our religion in Arabic is called adala. There are two concepts, adala and muru'ah. Okay, so one qualification that all jurists spend the most time discussing, it was a judge's adala or moral probity. It is a condition of general ethical conduct and virtue both before and after appointment. The basis of stipulating moral probity is the verse, O you who believe, when a sinner comes to you with news, then clarify it. This verse indicates an a priori necessity to investigate claims surrounding morality and upright character. So this is what you call qiyas al-awla, where something is referred to, and by necessity, something higher than it is proven as well. Yeah. Moral probity was generally defined as a character intrinsic to oneself that obliges one to maintain mindfulness of God, abstain from major sin and minor sin, and avoid morally suspect behavior, even if permissible. That's an important point. Even if permissible. Okay. In fact, the condition that a judge not be appointed unless he is known for this high level of moral probity is one there is consensus of all Muslim scholars. What this means is that when you have more than one possible candidate of equal qualification, the ones whose probity is suspect are disqualified. Okay, and this here we can talk about possibly the different candidates that were in the running, but I think the political situation of America will make this, untenable. Joe Bradford says that. And then he goes on to sort of infer or indirectly reference this accusation against Kavanaugh, because he tweeted the thread with the hashtag Kavanaugh. So he says, so for example, the idea is the judge, he needs to be squeaky clean and spotless. All right. And this is what the books, our legal tradition has stipulated. All right. So he says, so for example, adultery and fornication are sins that fulfill both, in the sense that they are major and minor sins and they break somebody's adala. They are punished by stoning or flogging in this life, and in hell there are specific punishments such as roasting in a pit at the lowest part of hell. Yo, this guy didn't pull any punches. Another major sin in Islam is the consumption of intoxicants. Any form of sexual assault that results in penetration will be a major sin that results in stoning, lashing, or both. So I'm just gonna, go down to his, sort of conclusion. Okay, so he mentions this hadith in Surah An-Nur about accusing chaste women of fornication. He says, indeed, those that accuse chaste, heedless, believing women are cursed in this life and the next, and they will have a painful punishment. A priori are those that accost women sexually as acts. Accost women means sexually harassing them. Yeah. So, grabbing her ass, for example, or, talking dirty to her when she's like a total stranger to you or something like that. A priori are those that accost women sexually as acts against them are worse than statements against them, and usually result from the lack of value men place on women. So he's not making any claims as to his opinion on the Kavanaugh hearing, but indirectly he's saying, how will Islam deal with this from the legal basis? And I think that's something that even a liberal, can get behind, where we have this extremely high standard for positions that require that confer a necessary level of authority and deference and power in the Muslim community. So yeah. So based on that, what are your initial thoughts? And then let's transition to the Kavanaugh hearing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's true for the most part. I mean that I think our standard of choosing a leader or an amir, or even if it's a qadi or whatever it may be, the standard, the character of the individual must be impeccable, right? I mean, it has to be something that everybody can, for the most part, say, hey, that is genuinely a very respectable and honorable individual, right? And I think the fact that if his character is in question, for example, maybe if there's some doubt over the way he may behave, that is enough generally for him to be disqualified, right? And I think that strict standard is something that is unique to Islam, right? I mean, other people, other people or groups may have that individually, but religiously is what I'm saying, that like it's very unique to Islam to have that somebody can actually be judged for their not, I don't want to say actions, judge, but what I mean is they can actually be analyzed for the way they behave with people in public, and then based on that, they can either be appointed or not appointed. They can be credible or not credible, right? They can be taken as a witness or not as a witness, right? And so this is a very important fact. So what it means is that somebody, just because he has power, just because he has money, just because he has popularity, doesn't mean that he can be appointed to a position. Because if there is a shadow of doubt, any amount, upon his character, that is enough to disqualify him. And so had that been the case here in America, for the way we're doing things now with Kavanaugh, we wouldn't even have to be hearing a hearing or any of these things at all, right? It would simply be a matter of disqualification. But because we unfortunately don't have that standard, we've got to go through this huge ordeal of listening to him cry for 30 minutes straight, and then take a pause to profess his love for beer, and then go back to crying again, right? I mean, we have to deal with this. And we also have to deal with, Dr. Ford inability to express herself at times, which becomes kind of frustrating. Like, I feel like saying, say it, spit it out. You know what I mean? But like, what are you going to do, right? So that's just how I feel about it,
Yeah. Let me just ask you, first of all, obviously we don't expect, because these people are non-Muslims, right? We can't expect them to have the high standards that we have. But assuming that they were, like, we were going by this standard where like even the hint of impropriety is enough to disqualify you, like, how are you going to elect a Supreme Court justice? Like their morality is completely different. All of them drank alcohol. Maybe they smoked blunts at one point. They might have even done a little bit of cocaine now and again. And they've already, for sure, majority of them have had premarital sex. On what basis are you going to select a judge? And then also after that, I'm sorry, man, I'll let you just get started real quick. And also, at what point do you protect the reputation of a judge from false accusations that have a political attack basis behind them? Yeah. So in this Me Too culture, and we wanted to talk about Me Too as well, where you can accuse anyone of anything in public and be the court of public opinion is judge, jury, and executioner. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
So speaking from like an American perspective, the moral code is essentially what is legal and illegal, right? I mean, if drinking is allowed here, drinking is not a crime, right? If smoking a joint is allowed in your state, smoking a joint isn't a crime, right? You're not immoral for doing that. So there's definitely clearly a different standard of morality from Islam and what is in America, right? So keeping that in mind, let's go back to, how we judge him based on American standards. That's just how we're going to have to do it. I mean, if the man has broken any laws, right, he can't be in a position to sit as a chief justice to then interpretate law and give decision, right? I mean, it's fairly common sense, right? I mean, if the guy has abused somebody, or if he has, stolen or been involved in scams or murder, right? The guy is not fit to be a chief justice. I think the problem now is with the Me Too movement is, at what point are we able to, number one, determine whether those allegations are true or not, while, essentially keeping away the media bias. And the second thing is, how far are we allowed to go back to in a person's lifetime, in terms of where and how we determine whether he is, immoral or moral. So the way I look at that is this: the Me Too movement in general, I'm not a big fan of it, right? I think that I understand the intention behind it, which is noble, I think. Kind of like BLM, right? BLM originally was started for something good, but it was hijacked by crazy leftists who will stop at nothing but to destroy people who disagree with them, right? And that's kind of what's happening with the Me Too movement, right? I don't know if you saw, but the Me Too movement really kicked off with Weinstein, right? But one of the girls that actually accused Weinstein actually was involved in a payoff. Asia something, whatever, Aranta, whatever her name was, where
Asia Argento.
Argento or Argenta?
Argento or Argenta.
One of
She
the two.
had,
Anyways,
yeah, she had sex with a minor.
yeah, and she had to pay him money.
Statutory rape.
Exactly. And so at what point do we say do we apply the same standard and say, well, is that woman credible? And for me, the way I would say is this, that regardless of whatever political bias there is, if an event happened, a crime doesn't know politics. The timing of bringing that crime up may be related to politics, but in actuality, if a person committed a crime, that person should be held liable for that crime, or at least take accountability for what they did. We have to understand that, that there's always going to be political bias, right? Like Republicans right now, they don't care. Kavanaugh could have raped somebody in the Senate and they're going to confirm him because they want him there, right? And the Democrats, Kavanaugh could have been an angel on earth and not even touched a woman, a hair in a woman's head, but they're going to crucify him because they want that seat. So in all reality, Republicans and Democrats really don't care about victims, right? Victims are just another a tool in the box, right? Where we can use you. If it wasn't Dr. Ford, it would have been Ramirez. If not Ramirez, it would have been, Sweatnick, right? I mean, there are people that are willing to come forward and, and tell their stories. And unfortunately, that's just the way politics is. But I think if in fact Kavanaugh if there's evidence of this and it can be corroborated, he needs to be ruled out. And I think that we'll know that, hopefully with the investigation with the FBI. But I just want to say this one thing. The FBI investigation, whether it can prove something or not, doesn't mean he's innocent, because in the American court of law, right, it doesn't prove innocence or victimhood, right? It doesn't prove
guilt,
anything.
Yeah.
What it prove or guilty, right? Because the American system is flawed in the sense that you have to have a certain amount of evidence that is satisfactory for a jury to understand and determine that the person is guilty, right? Before you can actually be.
But I mean, innocent until proven guilty is an Islamic concept as well. Like if a person is not convicted of a crime, you cannot say that, oh, he just wasn't convicted, but he probably did it, right?
Oh, no, I agree. No, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is, for example, in Islam also, though, a woman's testimony about rape is a big deal, right? I mean, also as well, right? I mean, but in the court of law, like here, it's a bit tougher because we do put an emphasis on everyone is innocent until proven guilty, because we don't want to wrongfully. But what I'm saying is that just because in any case, when you can't prove something to a jury in the court, it doesn't necessarily mean the person is innocent. He could have done it. But what the reality is you just don't have the case to prove it. So at that moment in time, by the law, he is innocent, and we have to treat him as such, right? Regardless of how your feelings are. So basically, the law doesn't care about your feelings, right? It's either something legal or it's illegal. And the Me Too movement is all about feelings. I feel like this. I can't do this. I'm under this, because of that, right? But the law says, okay, that's fine. Put your feelings aside, but what can you prove to us to help make your case?
And you know what? This just popped into my head as well. It's like the reason why you're seeing this, trial by the court of public opinion is because these people, they don't have any religion and they don't believe in an akhirah. Yeah, because let's say your point is absolutely correct. Just because he hasn't been convicted in a court, doesn't mean he didn't do it. Yeah. So the only difference is he hasn't faced justice in this life. In fact, his punishment in the akhirah is going to be much worse if he did it, right? Because the punishment in this life is an expiation for the punishment in the akhirah, right? So in this way also Islam is so much more superior than these this degenerate freaking godless lifestyle that these people are living, is because everybody's like, what goes around comes around. You can't do nothing without getting what's coming to you, right? Whether you do some good, you're going to get the good back. You do something wrong, you're going to get it back, right?
No, you're absolutely correct. And so they have to try to find the best way to achieve justice because they're not concerned with the afterlife. And so, unfortunately,
Oh, hold on 1 second, 1 second, man. Yo, Fahad, don't tell us what to talk about. You're welcome to listen if you want. But if the content is not interesting to you, you don't have to watch, right? Nobody's forcing you to be here, man. Appreciate you.
yeah, no doubt. I mean, but like I said, the other thing is that it's just very it's tough right now in an age where we're coming to realize that there is issues that we have with gender relations because of the whole breakdown of society and men and women, that there's going to be questionable actions and women will be wanting to take advantage of their newly found rights and abilities and spotlight. But I, I think when it comes to the Kavanaugh case or the whole ordeal, this is only a symptom of a whole entire movement. The only reason why it's important is because Kavanaugh is being nominated for Chief Justice, and once you do that, you can't change it, right? They're on there for life, right? And I can
Yeah,
understand why the
they're
Democrats are
fighting so
fighting
hard.
tooth and nail, exactly, and the Republicans are fighting tooth and nail because you kind of solidify your influence in the legislative branch,
Yeah,
essentially with having a minority or a majority. And I think it's fair enough to actually, in this particular case, I think it's fair for women to, if it's true and it happened, that they should be fighting tooth and nail to make sure that that guy doesn't get appointed if it's true, because this is a big deal. How do you have somebody who's going to be voting on things like, important cases like or that may be similar to, Roe versus Wade, right? I mean, you have to have a moral compass, and if you can get away with being an offender and a an abuser of women, I don't think you should be someone. If there's even a doubt in my mind, I think the fact that there's even a doubt about him should have him removed, because we have plenty of other nominations or nominees that we could potentially use that are as qualified as him. We don't need to be stuck on one person, right? I mean, I think it would do America much better than to be divided over one simple guy. You know what I mean? Like, he's not some unique case in America, right? We have
yeah,
many people that can be replace his job. You
yeah.
know,
These justices are a dime a dozen.
exactly. I mean, it's just another white guy that went to Yale. Big deal. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
who cares? You know what I
big
mean?
deal, right? Yeah, exactly. Oh
Yeah,
man.
yeah.
And who I like for discussions like this is Ilyas Lahos. He's the co-host of Safina Society. You know him, right? He's on 85X's on Twitter. Man, this guy is a smart dude. In fact, I asked him to do a Safina Society episode where he talks about this 3D gun and gun where they'd go over the 3D gun issue. I think that would be very interesting
Yeah,
because that
maybe we
dude
could
is
do a
quite
joint session with
yeah,
him one time, and get him on, and we could talk about it. Maybe it'd be great. I
yeah,
think political issues are important for Muslims to be aware of, because unfortunately they do impact the way the way your lifestyle is in America. And I'm not saying whether you have to vote or not. That is entirely up to you. But you should be politically aware of your environment. At least know what changes are taking place and how that affects you as a Muslim in America. I think so.
cool. Yo,
Yeah,
so man, I think we did 2 hours, man. This was like almost like a Joe Rogan episode. I thought we
I
were
know.
we had planned to do just like 30 or 45 minutes, but I think it's good to actually dig into these topics in detail. Um, I think we covered everything that we wanted to cover.
Yeah,
One thing that I wanted to mention is like uh, when we're talking about issues, especially when we're talking about Muslims, we're only talking about Muslims in general, and we're talking about ideas. When we're criticizing Muslims, we're criticizing ideas. We're not criticizing individual Muslims. So for that reason, you never heard us mention any specific Muslim by name. And if you guys are viewing and you're a Muslim man, like you have no business talking about specific Muslims behind their back. I'm very, very aggressive about this because I honestly, I hate a lot of Muslims on. I mean, I really dislike a lot of online social media Muslims, but I will never speak about them behind in a private in private or mention them by name specifically in private, because imagine getting to the gates of paradise on the day of judgment, yeah, and you can't get in because some asshole you had a beef with back in the day has a lot of your deeds because you went and started talking shit about him behind his back. And I know I'm not a perfect Muslim. You hear me cussing on the stream and stuff like that, but this is something that I am very, very, very strict about. If I usually I'll on my pages, I'll even block people who talk about Muslims, in a way that could be even remotely considered as backbiting. Yeah. So if you guys are watching, please don't mention specific Muslims by name. Respect the honor of your Muslim brother or your Muslim sister. Goes for the
Yeah.
women as well. Yeah. The guy.
No, I get it. I mean, there's a lot of Muslims out there on Twitter that I don't agree with, but at the end of the day, I follow you, I subscribe to you, I show you love, not because I have to. It's just because I feel like at the end of the day, we're one family, right? We all need to get along with us, with each other, one way or another, right? I mean, you may not like me, I may not like you, but I'm gonna hear you out because maybe you can convince me. Maybe you might have that one tweet that I enjoy or maybe beneficial for me, or maybe I might have that one that would be good for you, right? There's no harm in listening to what your brother, your sister, or just your Muslim homeboy has to say. You know what I mean? Maybe it's something, the minute you close that dialogue and the minute you began to just talk behind their back and not listen to them anymore is when you actually become the problem, right? So if you have an issue, anybody, if you feel like I talked about anybody on this show, like directly, if you think I was mentioning you, I promise I wasn't trying to intend to mention anybody. But if you feel like it was an issue, DM me or tweet at me and let me know. I will make a public apology. I don't mind. I mean, but again, I talk about ideas because I challenge ideas all the time. I don't think ideas need to be respected. Human beings need to be respected, not ideas. I can challenge any idea that you have. It means jack shit to me. All right. At the end of the day, I don't care about your feelings. I mean, I do respect you, but ideas don't have feelings and they're open to criticism. So if you're going to put them forth out there on a public platform, expect them to be criticized and torn apart. Right. It's just my disclaimer.
Boom. All right. That's a good point to shut it down. Man, appreciate you coming on, man. I had a great time. It was like the time flew by, right? We need to do this more often.
We
It's
should.
like
We should. Maybe once a month, or we'll get it on.
For real. Because it's nice. Because if you're talking solo, you can only talk for a certain amount of time. You can hold people's attention only for a certain amount of time. Typically, it's like 20 to 30 minutes, before people get bored. But when there's a dialogue and you're interacting with the audience as well, people stay interested and watch a lot more. All right,
Definitely.
man. For those of you who are watching, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Please hit the like button. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon. And share this talk with your friends. Maybe it'll trigger a bunch more Muslims on Twitter. Jazakumullah khairan for watching. Jazakallah khair Murtaza for coming on. This is Nabil Aziz, becomingthealphamuslim.com and the Becoming the Alpha Muslim podcast. And now apparently live streaming. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.